Thank you so much for being here with us today. We are going to get started shortly. Before we get started, we have some folks from the interpretation team with a few remarks.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to give the instruction or direction for the interpretation in Kreyòl. I'm going to speak in Kreyòl first, and that will follow by Spanish and English. Good evening, everyone. Good evening again. My name is Luman, and I work for MOB Interpretation Services. Non, moi c'est Luman. Je travaille pour MOB Interpretation Service. Nous là pour nous bailler interprétation en créole, en espagnol, parce que espace là nous pouvons l'utiliser plus anglais. Et tout n'a pour reconnaître ce nous qui là cap aider traduit en signe langue qui fait espace là plus accessible pour tout le monde, quelle que soit la langue que vous parlez. Nous invitons, si vous avez besoin tendez tout ça qu'a fait là. Jean l'a fait, la fête là, en créole. Nous capables d'aller derrière, il y a un petit appareil qui aide nous. Nous apprenons qui aide nous. Tendez-li en créole ou bien en espagnol. Et appareil là, à gauche, là, si nous allons prendre, si il y a des gens qui peuvent les lever, nous lever, mais nous poté petit appareil là pour nous. Après ça, nous souhaitons bonne participation, bonne écoute. Pour les gens qui sont YouTube, je regarde YouTube channel là, pour les gens qui sont YouTube, ils sont capables de regarder. Ils sont capables de faire le numéro 305. Numéro créole là, c'est 305 901 26 92. Et là, nous prenons cet appareil là en bas, à gauche, là, nous prenons cet appareil pour nous tendre en créole. Nous mettons dans la chaîne 10 si nous avons besoin de tendre en créole. Quand y a Mélissa, pour dire nous même bagaille là, en espagnol avec en anglais.
Gracias, Luman. Buenas noches, mi nombre es Melissa Nieto, yo soy parte del equipo de MARP Interpretation Services. La misión de esta organización es asegurarse que las personas que deseen participar en español o en Kreyòl puedan hacerlo a través de dos mecanismos. El primero es el mecanismo en el lugar, en el sitio, para aquellas personas que están aquí presentes y desean escuchar en español. Tenemos equipos disponibles en la parte de atrás. Y el canal para ustedes va a ser el canal número 1. Para las personas que van a unirse a la programación de esta noche, pueden comunicarse al siguiente teléfono: 786-665-8802. My name is Melissa Nieto. I work for MARP Interpretation Services. Our mission and the mission of PAM is to make sure that we offer programming where people can participate in the language of their preference. Tonight, the three languages are English, Spanish, and Kreyòl. If you need any assistance, please let us know and enjoy your programming. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, welcome everybody. Before we get started and I give my formal introduction, I want to welcome Marie Franco, who will be giving our bios for the panelists who are speaking with us today, and myself, and then I'll go ahead and introduce the program, the format, and what to expect.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you. My name is Marie Franco. I'm the program assistant for creative aging, and I'm here to introduce our panelist and moderator. First, I want to introduce our moderator, Nicole Combo. This evening, Nicole Combo is a Miami-based artist, educator, and program coordinator at Perez Art Museum, Miami. Nicole is a Miami native born to Colombian immigrant parents. Her socially engaged practice explores intergenerational memory, matrilineal relationships, and everyday rituals of care belonging within diasporic communities. She builds spaces for storytelling and connection across generations through photography, book arts, and collaborative workshops. She leads the museum Creative Aging here at the Perez Art Museum, offering free art-making experiences for adults 55 and older that center community and lifelong learning. On our conversation here today, we have Lonnie Johnson. Lonnie Johnson is a multidisciplinary visual artist born and raised in Miami, Florida. As an artist, educator, model, and activist, Johnson understands that artists have cyclical obligation to give back and nurture their communities, and creativity must be used to better our world. Through movement and ritual, she creates healing spaces for Black women and explores how ancestral and historical memory inform how, when, and where we enter and claim space. Johnson is the lead coordinator of Art Detectives, an art education program rooted in the framework of social justice here at the Perez Art Museum, and a former chairperson for the National Visual Arts Selection Panel for Young Arts. Last but not least, we have Nereida Garcia Ferraz. Nereida is a Cuban-born artist whose work spans painting, photography, video, and social practice. Her art examines identity, feminism, exile, and nature through layered imagery that connects personal experience with broader cultural memory. Nereida co-directed the acclaimed documentary Ana Mendieta, Fuego de Tierra, and has exhibited internationally in institutions such as MoMA, Yale University, and the Museo de Arte Moderno in Mexico City. Here in Miami, she co-founded 801 Projects at the Jose Marti Building and has been dedicated to the art education through programs such as Women on the Rise at MoCA, North Miami, and Brick by Brick here at the Perez Art Museum, the award-winning outreach program. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. Hello, does this thing work? Okay, great. I'm gonna go ahead and grab my cue sheet. All right, so welcome everyone. Thank you again for being here today. I'm very grateful to have you here and to be engaging in this conversation alongside Nereida and Lonnie, who have been both my mentors and have guided me in working alongside education and art. We chose to bring us all together tonight to talk about how art intersects with personal and collective transformation, how we see that art can shape us, guide us, and also support doing that in educational spaces, which we've all experienced through the Creative Aging program, or those that participated. We're also interested in how to talk about how to build these spaces in Miami, how to support this endeavor, and how we have used art both in our practices and on educational spaces to uplift and build community. We will have our dialogue, and then we want to open it up to the people who are here to participate in a Q&A, to have some reflections, and I also would love to hear some takeaways from the participants of our program. What are you taking from this experience? And in previous experiences from art making or other educational spaces, what have you taken from those spaces? Our conversation also coincides with the Creative Aging program's culminating event, led by local environmental artist Beatriz Chachamovitz. Beatriz guided 15 student artists, all over the age of 55, in learning about the natural waterways, exploring their own memories of landscape, and ultimately creating their ceramic pieces that reflect their own experience with the environment. So I want to give a thank you to Beatriz for their guidance. And I also want to give a round of applause to the cohort who trusted the process and joined this experience for the last program of the year. I want to mention that this program is possible with the support of E.A. Michelson. And I also want to thank our phenomenal AV team, Denise and Andrew, for ensuring that this conversation is recorded and can be shared. I want to thank our Senior Director of Education, Marie Vickles, for all of the work that she does in providing free educational programming nationwide to hundreds and thousands of people. I want to thank Marie Franco for letting me put her up in the podium and for all of the work that she does in supporting our artists and our artist community. And I want to thank David Miller, our education program manager, and Natalie Fedora for all of the work that they do in supporting programs like this. So Marie introduced both Lonnie and Neri, but I also want to take an opportunity to have you guys introduce yourselves and start off with the opening question of what your introduction to both art and art education was. Whoever wants to start. Me first? I think you might have to turn the mic on.
Is this on? Okay. Good evening, y'all. I'm Lonnie Johnson, educator, artist, mama, native here to Miami, born and raised here. How I was introduced to art, I think, this may sound cliche, but my mother was an artist, but she wasn't allowed to practice because she came along in a time where a little black girl trying to be an artist was not something that was seen as a viable and sustainable career. So my grandparents was not rocking with that. But it worked out for me because she provided a space for me to be that weirdo black girl and explore what art was for me. Art education, it's funny because I always said that I never liked kids and I never wanted to be around them and I never would be a teacher. Watch out what you say never, what you're gonna never do, because you end up doing that thing. So I was introduced to teaching art education kind of by accident, out of need, because I had moved back here from New York and was unemployed. So I was like, well, maybe I'll just substitute teach, because that's an easy way, I thought. So I started substitute teaching at my aunt's elementary school where she taught. And it was very interesting because I was subbing everything but art at one time. But the art teacher in the middle school, because it was the K through 8, was going on pregnancy leave. So they asked me if I wanted to be her, I think it's called a 3100 is what they call it, a pool sub for her. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. So I kind of stumbled onto teaching in that way. It was interesting because I kind of tapped into what I received in art school, because the young people were very surprised that when they came in, there were still lifes in the room. Apparently, the teacher would just write the art assignment on the whiteboard and kind of just sit at her desk. And they were blown away that I was actually walking around and kind of giving them tips on how they should do things and learning how to see. So that was my introductory. And it was a school that, it wasn't a magnet school. It was a school that is one of the Title I schools. It was mostly brown and black kids. And to see those young people kind of shift in how they showed up each day, they were excited to come to make art, even though they weren't artists. That was really rewarding for me. So that was my introduction to art education.
It's working. My introduction, my father was a musician. He was a pianist. And I grew up, everyone in my house played piano. It was like, we call it the hottest seat in the house. Because my mom played, my father was a piano teacher also. And we would always sit in the piano and play. And this was in Cuba. And then one day we left, and we ended up in Chicago as Cuban refugees. And so that was like a big turnaround. And at the beginning, it was like the idea of being an artist was not in my mind, really. I always thought I was going to write. I really always had like stories, and I wanted to like really make books with them. But language was, a big thing. So, but I started like sneaking out of my house when I was 14, and I would like walk to a college that was close to the house in Chicago, and it was called Mandela College. And I would go there, and I sneak into the library, and I would go into the art books session. And little by little, I started informing myself about art history and about artists and like what they were doing, and like, So I became really interested in history, in the history of art. Hiding from my family, I created a portfolio of drawings. And little by little, I began just making these drawings started coming out of me. And I went to I was very brave. I still think I was. And I applied to the School of the Art Institute for a scholarship and to be admitted, and I got it. So only with one condition: I had to never fail a class. So I went to school with, I went to school. I was 19, and I wanted to get myself into every single thing. I needed to know about how to take photographs, films, videos, film history, independent movies. I wanted everything. So it was like, I think that was the first time in my life that I really got a sense of belonging. It was through art, through learning how to give voice to all of my needs, my creative needs. So I will never forget how I got there. So when I was a student, I began, because I was a Latina in Chicago, and still there was not, I'm talking about the mid-70s, still we were not very visible, and most of the friends I made at the school that were Latinos, they dropped out of the school. They could not make, the whole thing. And to me, it was a big challenge, of course, but, I started working at, repairing books at the library, at the museum library. I sold prints. But one day somebody told me that they were needing a teacher, an art teacher, in a Mexican refugee center in the Pilsen area. And I say, I do it. So I went there, and I learned from like many things, from like working in an immigrant center. And I began teaching the only thing that I had not learned at school, which was ceramics. And I said, sure, I can do it. Bring the clay and bring the kids. So it was an experience, okay? And I felt like totally connected to the students. I felt connected to their mothers, to the people that work in the place and everything. So art teaching became almost like something that came with my career as a teacher.
Yep.
I really love starting there, because I think one thing that I think about as a artist that also is an educator is how much education is completely part of my practice. Teaching is a way for me to see what I do reflected back, kind of always remember and relearn, and always be in the role of the student. And so I want to talk a little bit about, I think being an educator is one way to navigate the art world, to not necessarily have to dedicate selling, your work and your craft and being able to make a living, but not everybody chooses that path. And so I want to talk a little bit about what made you choose the path of continuing to teach. What felt enriching about it? What did you learn? What have you learned throughout this process of teaching?
I take it there. Well, something that started like that with that clay class became like, I would say like a way of creating community. I realized that my practice as an artist alone, like going through the venues of like exhibiting, I was lucky. I got a gallery after like art school. But that was not enough. That was not enough because, in a sense, if we don't prepare, and I always felt like that was like a sense of duty for me. If we don't prepare the next generations, if we don't make people aware of how important the voice is in terms of the art, I feel like we are just working in circles, you know. It was important through teaching to sort of like influence and start like inject into my students not just the skills of making art, but also the skills of questioning things about that, you know, that they needed to question, not just accepting anything, but just to like recognize their own voice. I want to leave it there.
For me, I mean, I've always had an affinity to work with young people. I was working with young people when I was a young person, whether it was through community projects. I've always enjoyed allowing young people to kind of have a space to be who they are. And I think that for me, it's a huge part of my practice to kind of show up for young people the way that I needed adults to show up for me. And especially within art school, you know, art school is not the easiest thing, especially when you occupy the body that I occupy. And I understand that when I enter a space or I have these young people enter a space and they see me, that alone is a revolutionary act. That alone is already providing something for these young people, especially in art. Because I know for me, I never had a black woman artist teacher, even in higher education. So I took it upon myself as kind of like a duty, like it was a responsibility for me to kind of show up in that way and occupy space in that way. Even being a teaching artist here at the museum, like to have these brown and black babies come in here and their faces light up when they see somebody that look like them, that's important. That's needed. So I feel like that's a huge part of my practice, because if I'm claiming space in my physical work, then how am I continuing to do that outwardly as just who I am as a person, not just artistic-wise?
Thank you both for that. I wonder if it's a good time to talk and segue a little bit into what you have learned in working with such multicultural and various groups, especially, you know, ranging in Chicago, myself in New York, Lonnie, you in Miami, and I believe in New York as well a little bit. Working with the variety of groups, you know, currently I am the program coordinator for Creative Aging, which works with older adults. And so learning how to improvise, how to kind of shapeshift, and what that looks like in an educational space, especially from this type of context that we're referring to, where we're looking at education more as a non-hierarchical. We're all equal. We're not looking to teach something that's godly or, you know, biblical. We're looking to teach something that is a resource. And so there's this democracy involved in how we're teaching. So I'm just wondering, how does improvisation and performance and shape-shifting come into play in the classroom for the both of you?
It is like performance, but I don't want to say that because, especially with young people, like young people know when you're not keeping it real with them. They know when you're putting on airs. They know when you're performing, and they will clock you every time. You're gonna lose them. So that's why I'm kind of iffy on the performance part. But the shape shifting, you definitely have to be nimble in order to connect with them. I think that the best advice I can give people that want to teach is be authentic with them. Be honest, be yourself with them, because the moment that you're not, you lost them. And I just always try to show up my full self whenever I am with young people in a space, because that's also giving them permission to do the same. And a lot of times young people aren't used to grown folks giving them that agency to do so. So when they get it, it's, a little weird and they feel it in their body a bit, but they appreciate it because you're seeing them, you're not talking at them, you're talking with them. There's this exchange because I'm learning just as much from them as they're learning from me. So there's this idea that for me it's an exchange, right? Like it's not just, it's not transactional, it's an exchange. I'm getting from them just like they're getting from me, right? So, but there is a lot of, you gotta be swift on your feet with young people because they're gonna try you and they're gonna try to throw so many things at you. But I think that the more you are in tune with them, you gotta speak their language. You got to, even if it feels weird, you just gotta know what 6-7 means. Like you gotta know what that means. Like you just gotta know, because if you don't, you're gonna look crazy and they're just gonna talk around you. But if you know what it is, and then it's also like when you know what it is and you throw it back at them, they stop. They're like, oh shit, she knows. So it's like it gives you leverage, right? But it's just another way to build community in the space, right? Like because we're speaking the same language or we're aware of how all of us kind of exist in the space.
I think that like the practice of being an artist and teaching is always, like to me, every situation is different.
Yeah.
Every classroom is different. Every student is different from the other. And what I always try to do, I press for like skills and I press for like the materials, and learning the potential that a pencil has to create like major disruptions. But most of all, for me, teaching art is about also teaching about getting in touch with your own ideas. It's about recognizing, like at least, I'm talking about every level, like really allow the student to find out who they are, at least a little bit. If I'm able to, like, if I see that, and that's very recognizable when they find that out, I feel like I accomplished something.
Because they don't get space to do that often.
No.
They don't.
No.
In the classroom, it's this, that, and the third.
It's very mechanical. Teaching
Yes.
has become very... So like the art classroom is like a disruption. It's a major disruption into the system, into the educational systems, I remember, especially when I was in the Brick by Brick program, that we would go to like high schools and go into like very set environments of how the previous teacher, the art teacher is always like, almost like the criminal that walks in, We break the chairs, we sort of like sit them in different ways. We allow everybody to talk. We like give them like, we span the whole like limits of a classroom. And that's why it's so important to have art programs, because you really expand the whole like environment of teaching institutions,
And the art teacher, you become a lot more than just their teacher. You become, sometimes you're the therapist, sometimes you're the mama, sometimes you're the auntie, sometimes you're the, and you have to be prepared for that. Because, if you art is this thing that kind of cracks people open, yeah? So you got to be prepared that when you crack folks open, you got to hold space for them. And not everybody has the capacity to do that.
Can we talk about that specifically for a little bit and what you have both learned and how to create spaces that support this type of transformation, that support folks in opening up, in getting to see themselves and getting to also feel seen?
In my case, it's always listening. You know, I learn about them as much as they learn from me. It's like an exchange. I don't create hierarchies in the classroom. I like to create like a system of collaboration among the students. That when we get there, it's like always too soon to like, you know, recognize who is the best doing whatever. It's always in my practice, it's always like creating like an equal ground of sharing.
Yeah.
And in that environment, I usually bring all kinds of things. You know, sometimes not even like our materials, but, you know, other ideas or a video or a piece of music, or sometimes we just talk about like a poem. It's creating this space in the classroom to really expand the creative mode, you know. It's always, I think that, when I was working with Women on the Rise, I felt really, I have taught guys in some very like difficult situations, like jails.
And Neri, can you describe the Women on the Rise program and the Brick by Brick program as well?
Well, the Women on the Rise program was a genius program that was formed by Jillian Hernandez at the Museum of Contemporary Art in North Miami. And she recruited, she sort of like picked like this team of women artists in the city. And she sort of like, we taught art history, women art history. And then we taught the history, and then we created the curriculum and the exercises for the students to to learn from that voice we were teaching.
So mad I wasn't in town when they had this program.
It was
So good.
And you were working specifically with young women who were incarcerated.
I worked for a long time with Monica on the juvenile detention center, and on 27th Avenue. Yep. And I mean, the first time I went into that system, when I came out, I felt like the city had changed. Mm-hmm. When I entered that tunnel, I really felt like I was in a different part of the world. Yep. Okay? And I really felt like every Monday when we went, it felt like we were like sneaking in, like something for them that was really important, you know, like besides, they always ask for like potato chips, like and like real hot ones.
The hot Cheetos.
The hot Cheetos, yes, very. And, but then, you know, we would go there and teach Louise Bourgeois, you know, and they were listening and they were learning and they were like doing, you know, all the homework. Even the guards were doing the homework. Mm-hmm. So the next week when we came back for like the girls that were like still there, they would be talking about, you know, women artists, you know. So it felt really subversive. We felt like we were really like going into like this wheel. And I hope, you know, that some of them will like remember those lessons the way I remember them, you know? Yeah. It was really like breaking something and going in a different direction.
Yeah. Going back to hard classrooms, so the elementary, the K through 8 that I first started teaching at, that I was telling y'all about, I was noticing that the X-Acto blades were disappearing. And come to find out, they were taking them and having cutting parties. And And that broke my heart so bad. And, you know, we had to have these kind of, you know, the counselors, of course, had to get involved, and I had to have these kind of like group meetings with them. And I just remember that being such a hard time. But then I want to say maybe 2 years after that, I was at the Metro Rail station at Dayland South, and I was getting on the train, and I heard somebody go, "Miss Johnson, Miss Johnson." And I turned around, and it was one of the young ladies that I taught at that school, and she said, "I'm not doing that anymore. I'm good, Miss Johnson, I'm good. Miss, I'm good." And I was just like, she had tears streaming down her face, and she just hugged me so tight. And I was like, "I am so proud of you. I'm so happy for you." And it's just moments like that where it's just like, I don't care if that child remembered the gradation scale or what a still life is. You know, I touched that young lady in a different way, and that young lady is now seeing herself in the world in a whole different way. So it's stuff like that that I think the art classroom can kind of provide a space to work through stuff like that, because I don't think the English teacher would have handled that the same way, or the math teacher would have handled that the same way. Sorry, no shade to math teachers, but I just feel like we were able to work through that. Well, I also have background in that kind of work too, but I think that those young people wouldn't have been as honest about what they were doing had they not felt safe in my classroom to own up to that. So it's a lot. You take on a lot. You gotta have healthy boundaries. Like, I had to learn that really quickly too, because so when I started teaching at New World, I was maybe 10, 12 years older than these young people. So they kind of sometimes saw me as their peers, and I'm like, no. There's gotta be boundaries. You know, I tried to go in there and be the cool teacher, but you gotta set boundaries. You don't want it to be a hierarchy, but you definitely want them to respect you. So it's a lot of things that you're kind of having to be nimble with. So I think that that's where the shape-shifting comes in, where it's like you're constantly having to figure out how to navigate this space so we're all protected and safe. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I think about as you guys are sharing is how, you know, I was taught that I'm not meant to teach people things, but I'm meant to create containers for people to learn. And I think about that a lot in the context of the creative aging program specifically, where, yes, you know, we're inviting artists that have so much information to share, but we're also creating a space for people to learn amongst themselves, to see themselves in their community, and to really explore and unfold. So I think I want to segue before I open it up to a Q&A and to an opportunity to hear from you all, your thoughts and reflections on this conversation. I think it would also be amazing to hear who here is a student, or who here identifies as a student, who identifies as an artist, who identifies as a teacher. But I'll get to that in a second. But before that, I would love to talk a little bit about what what we've seen in using classrooms as an opportunity to see people transform and to also transform ourselves. How art specifically, and maybe grounding it in our own artistic practice, right? You both are artists in your own right, and you are artists and educators. And I think that's important for your practice. So how do you see that art can support people in transforming, and how can we continue sharing that?
I think for me, it provides a possibility. Because as I shared, you know, my mom wasn't necessarily allowed to practice because of the time that she lived in. But when young folks see me and hear my story and hear about my practice, it becomes a possibility for them. I didn't have a lot of examples of being a Black woman artist, but now that I'm able to claim space in that way, once again, it's important for me to be able to do that. Representation matters, whether we like to say it or not. And it is important for these young people to see that I am a living and breathing Black woman artist, and it is possible for you to do the same. So that, for me, is key, to be that representation of possibility.
Yeah, and I'm reminded as well about the way that art allows us to imagine. Imagine things that aren't real, imagine different contexts that we don't necessarily know, and also imagine ourselves in different ways. It really expands our creativity, for lack of a better explanation.
Yep.
Nidhi, how about you? How does art help you transform things for yourself, and also how do you offer that to your students?
Well, to me, art is about transformation. It's about, it's something that happens in a regular basis. It's not you go into this transformation and then it stops right there. We always changing. We always learning. We are like, art is something that keeps expanding. And what comes to my mind when you're talking about this is that I really, I can say that that my teachings or my support or I have a lot of students that have become like serious, very serious artists and good artists. And
Some of them are here.
and that is like I feel like an enormous pride because in a way I feel like it never ends.
Yeah.
There is always a possibility. I enjoy, like I want to mention this, and that's why I'm sitting here supporting this program. I enjoy immensely coming here to the museum and sitting in the class that you have put together for the vitality in the arts. I really think that we tap in here a sector that was completely overlooked forever, I think, in terms of education and the museum. I mean, we were just talking before. The museum is such a resource place.
Yep.
I see the museum as an evolving. I mean, the same way that art evolve, the same way that we all change, the same way that we grow all the time, museums also do that. Yep. And they have this particular quality in the community. They are like the churches. They are like, they like the worship place where you come and see the work of other artists. So the museum is such an essential tool, especially now with the artificial intelligence, with all of the telephones, with all this stuff. It's really important that we use museums in this way, that we can reach out and make it available for new voices. I always think that there is no age for creating art. I mean, that's why I'm sitting here still, I had never been more productive than now in terms of my practice. And I gave a lot of time for teaching before. Now I'm being more careful in terms of the hours I teach, but I'm always willing to do so.
Yeah, and I thank you, Nidhi, for being here, and also for teaching 2 classes this year with our program. So thank you. So I'm wondering if there's anything else that you both want to share about your experience in our education and how classrooms have served as spaces for healing and transformation. And if not, I'm ready to transition a little bit to talk to some of the people in the audience who can be, a combination of educators, artists, students themselves, and hear from you all some questions or things that you're thinking about when we're talking about this. I feel like we're only addressing just a bit, and there's, just as we're talking about how there's a non-hierarchical dynamic in the classrooms, I think there's also important to mention that there should be a non-hierarchical dynamic in this space. And we all have things to share about how education, so I know, we're in a large auditorium, we're in a prestigious institution. However, I think we should take some, I actually lost, I don't have a clock, so I don't know what the time is. But I'm assuming we're somewhere. Okay, great, yes. Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
I'm good on time. So I want to take 20 minutes to open up the dialogue. And first, I would like to just kind of do a temperature check in the room. Who in the audience is an educator or identifies as an educator? Okay, great. Thank you for being here tonight. Who in the audience identifies as a student? I guess I should have raised my hand for the first one too, but okay, great. And who in the audience also identifies as an artist? Okay, great. So thank you everybody for being here. So with what we're sharing and what we're talking about as classrooms as spaces for transformation, art as spaces for transformation, I'm curious to some of the thoughts that you have regarding this topic, some questions that might be arising for you, and just opening to dialogue. And I do have some, topics that we can start with, but I'm hoping that we also diverge from these. The first one is who in your life, whether it's been an elder, a teacher, a friend, helped you see creativity as a form of healing. So if you just want to name somebody and maybe a story related to them. And have you experienced creativity as a form of connection and healing yourself? And if you wanted to share something about that.
Hi, my name is Julian. I'm sorry, Nicole, I didn't hear you asked. I was going to ask another question.
Yeah.
But first and foremost, it was great to hear from both of you all. Incredible words. And the question I have is, what would you say is like one of the biggest lessons you learned as an artist and also as an educator?
Thank you. Welcome, Julian.
I think I may try to answer. I had a very amazing awakening moment, very young in Chicago when I met another fellow artist. And she came to Chicago and she had my phone number and she called me and she's, she was Cuban also and we met and she asked me if I had a car, and I said yes. She said, pick me up, and do you like beer? And we sort of like, we went out like drinking beer and driving around Chicago. Don't tell anybody. And
It's being recorded.
And then we went to her place, and she showed me her work, and I was like blown over by her work, and her name was Ana Mendieta.
Yeah.
And Ana really came from this other place in terms of the practice she was doing, in terms of the work she was creating. She completely dismantled the whole art system for me when I saw her work. First of all, because she was not into selling the work. She was into making the work. So she was like a big influence and a big awakening person for me. And then I was able through her to get into my skills as a filmmaker, and then I made a video about her life. But it's
51-minute documentary.
that kind of earth, but that really changed a lot of things on me.
I think for me, realizing that my practice is more about what the work can do out in the world versus just the work. Does that make sense? And I think that for me is more important than the actual thing. Does the thing allow people to move? Does the thing allow for people to shift in how they see things? I'm realizing that is more important to me. Yeah. I've always, I wasn't clear about what my art was when I was coming up, but I did know that I had this feeling that it was more than just being draped on walls. I always felt like, well, first of all, I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me in those spaces to begin with, so I thought that I didn't belong there anyhow. But then I just felt like I had this feeling that my work was supposed to do something else. So just seeing how art in my practice can cause people to shift and move in how they see themselves is a gold star for me.
Yeah, I think my response to that question, I'll start with the education portion. I feel like, there's a lot of different things to mention, but for me as both an artist and a student and an educator, I think when I find moments where I'm able to feel seen, especially from a small group, like a group, a duet or a quartet, and I'm able to share something and they're able to reflect it back to me, not just with words, but with an image or with some other kind of expression. I think that there's something that happens to me chemically, or my chemistry, where I feel like I can take up space.
Yep.
And I feel like I can also be received, which, as a young person, it was a bit hard. We're talking about education and we're talking about, spaces that are transformative. But for me, growing up, classrooms weren't really transformative. They were confinements. They were spaces where I felt like I really couldn't be creative. It was only, Lonnie, I feel like you talked about it really beautiful. It was really only in the art room, in the art classroom, where I finally felt like, oh, wow, I can let go of all of these things that I was holding on to, but mathematics and literature and those spaces where everything, and it's not so much the genres or those mediums, but it's rather the way that our educational system is so like A, B, C, and these very rigid. So yeah,
Say it.
colonized, colonial, and dictator and oppressive, and meant to kind of allow, keep you in your box. And so in the classroom where I was able to explode, in an art classroom, I felt so liberated. And I think that beyond that, a step forward, when I was able to finally share those things and feel like people were seeing me, that was definitely transformative for me.
And using your practice as this entry point to the larger world, right? I like to think, even with my approach with education, allowing your space to be the entry point to spaces beyond what these young people are used to or what they're presented with. I really like to think that when I am with young people and through my practice, that I'm allowing kind of like a glitch in the matrix and letting folks in that wouldn't normally be into these spaces, right? So allowing yourself to be that gatekeeper in the way where I always tell people, like, I take the gate off the hinge and throw the gate to the side, like there shouldn't even be a gate. So just considering your classroom and your practice as this entry point to accessibility and being that for these young people is important to me too. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Oh, okay. We just talking? Nice.
Thank you, Julian. Anyone else have any kind of reflections or questions that they have? People that work in education, people that are students themselves. Gianna?
Hello, my beautiful fellow educators. You guys are wonderful, and I've learned so much from you all over the years, and from this space and from these cultural spaces. I wanted to emphasize how important these spaces are. And Eddie, you were mentioning how important the museum space is and these programs, because so many, sometimes in offices, I'm an art therapist, so offices or classrooms can be so intimidating to start in this journey. And these museums and galleries and having art already created, it helps break that intimidation, and it really helps start the conversation of, look, something is being created. What do you see? What do you feel? Is it something positive? Is it something negative? And that is a starting point. The moment I fell in love with art is actually when my mother, she worked in a art frame gallery, and I remember seeing this big white canvas, larger than me, with a black circle in the middle. And I remember asking her, oh, why is this art? Just curious. I was a child, so I wasn't critical yet, as adults become. And she started to name how it's not just a black circle on a canvas. It is the choice that the artist made, the choice of why they chose a circle, the choice of why they chose the color, the choice of the placement. And all of those choices are what make the art art. And I think that's something that educational programs and educators do, is they bridge that gap between, oh, I could have made that, which, you know, we all really hate to hear that, especially in contemporary and modern museums, right? But it's so much more. It's the concept and it's the choices behind the artist's decisions to create the art. And I think that's where these programs really help merge that. And what educators do is it's not just about showing the benefits of art to making art, but it's the benefits of viewing art, experiencing art, listening to art, making art. Whether you're good, bad at it, it doesn't matter. It's just about experiencing art. So I think that's something I just wanted to echo, because you guys had mentioned it, but how transformative these spaces are, and how important they are to society, because they help bridge that gap that some people might be too intimidated to start exploring it.
I really love that. I really love the emphasis on reminding people that they have a choice, because I feel like we are taught so often that we don't have choices, that we are in a cog. And I think art spaces as a way to remind us of that, you know, that's great. Thank you. Thank you, Gianna.
Hello, I'm Evelyn. I just wanted to ask you, all of you, that you are artists. When did you knew that you were artists? Or how did you decide to become an artist? How was that process? Thank you.
Thank you.
To be honest, I couldn't do anything else. I said because I couldn't do anything else.
It's not a choice.
No, it's not.
No.
Like, you're chosen. You're chosen. It's not a choice. You know how many times I've been like, I'm going to law school. I'm going to be a nurse. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a choice. You're chosen. And I know that sounds witchy and shiny, happy people, hippie-like, but like, I truly, just like, you know, I feel like athletes are born, they're chosen. Artists are chosen. Like, this was given to you. So, do what you will with it.
There's this beautiful writing by Anias Nin that says something along the lines of like, I couldn't accept the world of my parents. I couldn't accept the world of politics. I couldn't accept the world of X, Y, and Z. I had to create my own. And I resonate with that a lot as an artist, because I feel like what art allows me to do is create my own version of reality that enables me to exist in a way that feels authentic and holistic and collaborative, that unfortunately not a lot of other fields, for lack of a better word, allow. But more so because, like Lonnie said, I needed to create my own world. And this was the only world that I really have been able to exist in. And there's still problems in it. A lot. But at least I'm able to make spaces like this and make spaces where I can focus on my creative practice. And that, for me, is invaluable.
Yep. The choice is whether you're going to do it or not.
Well, I always felt like in my case, I mean, since I was already talking about like drinking and driving and all of that, I always felt that if I was not an artist, I would be maybe a criminal.
I mean, we're going to leave that there.
But that makes sense, right? It's like, you know, you're kind of, as an artist, you're not really conforming to the traditional forms that, you know, we're taught to do, right? Like work a traditional 9 to 5, even though there are artists that also have to do that. But, you know, all of these like conditions. So I think what you're alluding to in a way is like, you had to break the norm of what to do to be able to survive and exist in your body.
Yep.
And, you know, I do wonder what the reality of so many people are that aren't able to make that decision.
The thing is that everything is like, that's what I was trying to say before in terms of like, when the students, going into a classroom, an art situation, going into, you know, like the environment of, like walking into a regular classroom as an artist, wanting to share with the students experiences about creating something with like whatever material we have there. It's already so, I feel like estamos transgrediendo. We like, how you translate that? Like transgredir.
Marie?
Transgredir, Marie? ¿Cómo se
Transgredir.
Like going, we're stepping beyond. You know, it's like,
Transcend.
Transcend.
you know, it's like you have to sort of break, like open the windows, exercise, you know, put some like incense. You have to create like new spaces so art can happen. You know, you have to break a few things so art can happen. You cannot just go all tense and like, you know, you have to allow things to happen when you are in a classroom. You have to allow transformative things to happen. I think everyone to like sort of discover that thing that we're talking about. And not everybody does, but some people do, you know. And maybe that's like a tall call for like art teachers, you know, having to like, but I always felt that way. I always felt like I'm going to like really change this room. I don't like any of that. And I would just completely like, let's turn around the chairs and face this other world. It's like being able like it's like you have to believe in your own voice.
Yeah.
You have to be able to say, you know, how it feels.
Yeah.
What feels better, what situation feels better. It's like, it's not just about art materials, it's about everything.
Yeah.
It's like the whole cosmology is happening when you're in an art situation.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I think being an educator, being a teacher is a calling as well. I think you're chosen to do that work too. Because I truly believe that not all artists are teachers. Not all artists can be teachers. There's a lot of artists that should not be anywhere near young people. But I feel like, but all seriousness, like I feel like teaching is also one of those things where you're called to do it.
Thank you, Evelyn. Anybody else? I'm also curious if any of our students from Creative Aging have any reflections or anything that they're taking with them from the workshops. Maybe this is too big of a space to share that. Sade? Well, let's wait until they give you a mic.
Hi. Is it on? Yeah. Hi, my name is Sade, and I was part of not the last, I was part of Leanne's.
That was the previous one, yeah.
Yes, the previous Creative Aging.
Leanne Bosque.
Yes, and I just wanted to say that it was truly a transformative experience. I'm so glad I just happened upon this series and this particular museum that was, offering this. I say offering because it was like a gift. Because there comes a time in everybody's life, I guess, but I certainly was at that time in my life where I was thinking, okay, it's time for another transformation. What am I going to do now? And I want to do something that is really that really feels like me. Because I truly believe that we all have, we're not just one thing. We're not just capable of doing one thing. So at different times of our lives, certainly in my life, I've done different things. But I got to this stage where I thought, yeah, there's this thing that's been nagging, and it's always been a pastime or a thing, but I've never really put my whole heart into it because, you know, things are happening. Life is going on. You're in the corporate world. You're doing this and that. And then I stumbled upon this gift, as I say, and came to the series, did the class, you know, did the classes, realized that there were certain skills that I had that I never thought I did, and was working with some pretty prolific artists who never made me feel as if, you know, never made those of us who were doing it for the first time feel as if this wasn't the place for us. And it felt like you were working with equals. I think you've mentioned this. And we also created community. So we're all still in touch with each other. We've met other people. And I came here today because I just wanted to have that feeling again of being amongst friends and equals and creatives and just have that buzz. And I looked at the work that was out there on display, and I was just blown away by what is possible and what was possible with them as it was for me. And also about opening up, I'll just quickly say that the piece of art that I made was based on memory, familial memory, the memory of my mother plaiting my hair. And it was it was an opening up for me. It was an emotional thing for me to create such a piece. But I felt comfortable enough in that space to create something like that and to describe to people what that meant to me. So, cut a long story short, I just want to say that this has created also a portal for me to want to explore even more. So I'm doing all sorts of things like macrame, and I'm learning to knit. And I also find that I've also discovered I like working with my hands. So yes, thank you very much for allowing us to be able to express these parts of ourselves that maybe we're not even aware of. Thank you.
Thank you, Sade, for that reflection. I feel like
That right there. And that transcends, like, that should be an intergenerational feeling. Like, everyone should be able to have that space to have that experience. You know what I mean? There's no age. That's timeless. Everyone should be able to experience that. I love that for you. Now you're making everything now. Love that for you.
I would just second what you said.
Yeah.
It was the most fun and a great outlet for creativity, a field that I haven't explored. I'm going to knitting and writing, and it just, you know, drawing frightened me to death. But the sculpture was fun, and I loved every minute of it. So that's it.
Giving yourself permission to do so.
Thank you both. I think we'll close off with that note. I want to invite everybody to take a look at the exhibition downstairs before we head out. The ceramics created by 15 students inspired by the natural waterways in South Florida, led by Beatriz Chachamovitz. And I want to give a heartfelt thank you to Lonnie and Nereida for offering us their time and their wisdom and joining us tonight. And thank you all for being here.